was only 41. By channeling the extraordinary anguish he felt over Diana's death, John went on just the following year to put his energies into the exuberant dancing and singing lead Danny Zuko in the amazing hit Grease, which went on to gross $400 million.
And with his tremendous success came another onslaught of tremendous pain. The 24-year-old's mother, Helen, died of cancer in 1978.
Well, I think grief can be a real galvanizing agent, and it can inspire us to work. But I think we could also become lost in that work because we're trying to shut out some kind of pain. We may throw ourselves into any role that's come our way, in any job. We may just look for any way to blot out that pain and perhaps find refuge in overwork.
Travolta began his slow and steady descent into second-rate roles and downright flops. The disaster of the movie Moment by Moment churned up extra pathos because its storyline paralleled John's own life. It followed the tragic romance between a younger man, played by John, and an older woman, played by Lily Tomlin. In 1981, during the shooting of director Brian De Palma's box office dud Blowout, Travolta began to suffer again from the insomnia that plagued him as a child, while he waited for his mother to come home from late-night acting jobs. Ultimately, the faltering actor took a 4-year break from movies altogether.
I think whenever we use some kind of behavioral method to cope with our difficult emotions, so if we throw ourselves into work, if we use some form of escapism, then those emotions are still lying there under the surface. And when we're a child who feels a lot of abandonment because our parents maybe aren't around very much, those feelings will come up again in adulthood, and death is the ultimate form of abandonment. As adults, we frequently revert to coping mechanisms that we used as a child during times of stress. So it seems quite likely that at this period of time, an adult will use some of their behaviors and patterns that were adapted as a child.
John Travolta did eventually start acting again, but he was now entering his 30s and he was still seen as the rebellious young teenager. He couldn't get any decent roles. In fact, things got so bad that the only recognition he got was a Raspberry Award for the worst actor of the 1980s.
Travolta made the utmost of his downtime.
During the time that I was doing less film, I actually had a chance to go out and enjoy my life quite a bit too. I traveled the world and I rubbed elbows with all sorts of people and kind of rekindled my purposes for doing movies and acting.
In 1989, while he was working on the eminently forgettable movie The Experts, John Travolta met actress Kelly Preston, and the two of them really hit it off. There was just one problem, that Kelly was already married. Well, she got divorced, and she went on to date George Clooney and Charlie Sheen before she eventually got together again with John Travolta in 1991. And this time it stuck. The two fell for each other passionately. Being an old-fashioned romantic, John impressed Kelly with his fancy footwork on and off screen, and the two of them were frequently out on the town strutting their stuff.
That's one thing about John. He's living proof that some white people do have rhythm.
Well, it's true. He's right.
John managed to charm Kelly Preston, of course, and they got married in September 1991. The ceremony was performed by a French Scientology minister, and that wasn't apparently legal, so they had to do it all over again with somebody more official. Then, 7 months, 8 days later, Jet Travolta, their first child, their son, was born, and he was apparently conceived during a weekend visit to the home of Bruce Willis and Demi Moore.
While he met with success on a personal level, Travolta's career was still floundering. But then, in 1994, the new edgy director Quentin Tarantino was casting his second film, Pulp Fiction. In a twist of fate, Michael Madsen turned down the part of Vincent Vega to appear in Kevin Costner's box office flop, Wyatt Earp. Understandably, Madsen continues to be angry about making the wrong choice. A longtime Travolta fan, Tarantino turned to the largely out-of-work 40-year-old to play the glib and likable hitman, Vega.
I think Quentin has always taken a personal interest in my career, even before he was in a position to help me. I was one of his favorite artists, and he couldn't wait to get to a position in his career where he could offer me work in the way that he imagined I should be.
The young director's casting choice changed Travolta's life forever.
Well, he just allowed me to be the actor that I knew I was, because he trusts me. Any director that lets me go and do my thing, because that's my job, is to me the smartest director. Because if you hire someone like me, you're hiring an unpredictable actor. And that's okay, but you just have to, you can't try to harness that. Because it's my gift to you as a director is to do something different. So let me do it, and Quentin would let me do it. I mean, he let me do things that most directors wouldn't let me do, you know.
My whole thing is to give you something different than what you would expect.
And Tarantino delivered. The world was used to Travolta as a sympathetic underdog, but the actor was so good at being a bad guy that the Academy took notice of him a second time.
I'm enjoying this more than I've ever enjoyed anything. I don't know, I just think I appreciate the idea that it's so difficult to get. I mean, I think when I first got nominated, I thought it would happen every year. You know, I thought that if I did well, and then 17 years went by, and this is the second one, I thought, okay, this is like, you have to do something really outstanding to get this. It's not just, you know, do a professional job, it's beyond that. So I'm more appreciative of it.
John did not win the Oscar, but his newfound fame continued. Even the international community recognized a new shine on John Travolta's star. Pulp Fiction won the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival in 1995.
We won the Palme d'Or in France. I knew that things would never be the same again. You could feel it. You could feel it in the air. There was a seriousness about that movie. In Saturday Night Fever, my performance changed the world. In Pulp Fiction, the movie changed the film forever. So I was part of two very important parts of history. At this point in my life, 10 years ago, it was more important to be part of a film that changed film history, because it would keep you in films forever. And I wouldn't be talking to you right now if it weren't for that movie.
Travolta attributes his comeback to more than just luck.
I think stick-to-itiveness and tenacity has a lot to do with it. I think, believe it or not, a somewhat of an ethical life has something to do with it in the long run. May not look like in the short run, but in the long run. You know, if you have trouble with drugs or alcohol or, you know, any kind of addictive thing that could get in the way, you know, I think there are a myriad of ways to get in the way of what you want. You have to have the talent as well to parallel the stick-to-itiveness and the tenaciousness along with clean. I mean, there's a lot to it to try to, in any profession. I mean, that's movies. I mean, you know, let's face it. I think by the time I got my so-called comeback with Pulp Fiction, I was ready to entertain again in a very big way, and had learned a lot from the time that I was a little more less busy.
Though he was only paid $140,000 for his appearance in Pulp Fiction, suddenly Travolta was the $20 million man. Offers were pouring in. The streetwise teenager pigeonhole had been blown apart. Much to his surprise, the veteran actor was being offered parts in action films, often as villains.
It's a puzzlement to me because it clearly started after Pulp Fiction, but I would have never predicted it, basically. But after a few movies where it really was making the audience happy to see me in that kind of thing, it felt like, okay, well, that's what you do then when you feel inspired to do so, you know, because it's something that's wanted and needed. I had fun always when I played.